Okay, welcome to September's Texas Teams Community Meeting. As always, we've been having some fun dialogue as we got started. Really want to thank Joy and everybody down at the DIR for their support of this community. They've been really instrumental in helping us to grow this and sending out the meeting invites and letting people know about it. I've also kind of taken to sending out the meeting requests to everyone who is pre-registered versus having to have people register at the beginning. And so what we would ask, though, if you don't mind, going out, this is it's not a registration, it's just a sign in. And so if you don't mind signing in, then you can either go to this URL, or if you take your smartphone and you turn on your camera and you point it at this QR code, then it will bring up the form for you to sign in. And one of the things that we also ask on this sign in is just for some feedback on the Texas Team community. If you like the community, if there's some things that we could do better, we're always seeking to improve the experience. And so please let us know how we can do better. So we have a pretty packed agenda, and I have this saying, someone is wishing their way through an agenda, meaning they have way too many slides and way too much content. So I may be wishing my way through an agenda this week, this month. But what we're going to do is we're going to go in. This is the welcome, and do a little bit of update on Teams usage and features. I'm actually going to jump order here a little bit and talk about the Microsoft Teams audio conferencing promotion that is currently underway. And then really excited, we have David Gottlieb from the city of Austin, and he's going to be bringing us what I call stories from the field. So we're going to be talking about the way David has been solving some of their business challenges and process inefficiencies, and leveraging Teams as a platform to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how Teams can be used as a platform to solve business challenges. And so again, if you don't mind filling out the sign-in sheet and the evaluation, I'll have this QR code and this link again at the end, then that would be much appreciated. I will send out, actually I think Joy will send out, or I can send out, at the end we'll send out a copy of the slides. You don't need to be taking things down feverishly, and then we will record the session, and then I'll post that to our YouTube channel. We have a list of all the recordings we've had so far, and so you can go and visit previous recordings as well. Okay, so the audio conferencing promotion. This is just a fantastic, really good deal. And so what it is, so when you create a Teams meeting, and so all of you received the invite to this, when you create a Teams meeting, the thing that it does by default is say that you can join on your computer or mobile app. And so let me use my pen here to circle this. This part, whoops, not a very good circle. So what audio conferencing, this is an add-on to your Office 365 subscription, and this is done by your leadership and your IT or your business groups. The audio conferencing then adds in this information and gives users a dial-in number that they can use to call in from a landline or a cell phone. And so sometimes I'll be in a scenario where I might be working from remotely, working at a coffee shop or something. And what I'll do is I'll use my computer for the screen share, but I'll actually dial in from my phone because I don't have good enough bandwidth, maybe in a coffee shop, to be able to have really good audio and the screen share. And so what we are doing is we are giving away audio conferencing to all of our customers. This is nationwide, both our government customers as well as our commercial customers. And the way that works is until the end of your agreement, that we have for those of you who are not in the purchasing world, there's a thing called an enterprise agreement. And so until the end of your enterprise agreement, or 3 years, whichever comes first, and really the only requirement is we want to make sure that you're using it. And so you have to be having 20% of Teams meeting adoption within the first 6 months after accepting the offer. So we're going to be reaching out to all the agencies. This is just the top level information. We have a lot more information about all the particulars about it and how to do this. If you are at an agency and in a leadership position and you're interested in more information, feel free to send me an email. I have my email address up here, the michael.kennedy@microsoft.com. And we have worked with the DIR to make sure that this is all above board and fine to do, and which it is. And so we'll be reaching out to all of the agencies and letting you know about this. But if you wanted to reach out to me or your account executive, I cover the state of Texas, all of the Texas agencies, and I also cover the city of Austin, which is a new account for me this year. Very excited to be working with them. All right, so I want to say welcome to the team. We have had just really fantastic growth in the use of Teams here in the state agencies in Texas, and I've now added City of Austin here. And so if you look at where we were back in May at 32,000 users, we're all the way up to 60,000 now. And just since the last meeting we had, where we had basically the beginning of July numbers, now we have the beginning of September numbers, we've added 7,314 Teams users just really in the last month and a half. And so just very excited about what we're able to do now with Teams and the broad adoption, and really appreciate all of you who have just leaned in. And I know it's so hard working remote and working from home, and just appreciate all of you using Teams. And I'm grateful that we're able to work together on this, and I'm grateful we're able to have this community. Joy Hall Bryant has set up lots of training, and we've worked together to put together lots of training for Teams for the different agencies and our different constituents. And Joy has a training coming up that's a targeted training on September 22nd. Joy, is that correct?
Yes, September 22nd at 11 o'clock. We sent reminders out today. It's on the DIR calendar. The Microsoft Store folks are going to focus this time on Teams itself, using Teams, setting up a team. Last time we focused on chat. So it's a granular look at a particular part of sort of the Teams world.
Yeah, really trying to dig in and make sure that you're understanding all of the capabilities that you have built into the platform. There's so much that can be done, and what we've really been focused on recently, if we look at the kind of maturity curve, is focusing on the basics. And so this is kind of where we all are, where we're using it for chat, we're using it for meetings. And then we, as kind of get a little bit more familiar with it, we move into this second area. And so, and this is using maybe some of your SharePoint applications, or adding additional tabs inside of Teams. And then where we want to go and where we want to get to some real innovation is moving up this maturity curve. And so what we're going to talk about today is some of these capabilities that are in Teams, as well as really dig in on some of the things that are being done by some of our customers. And so there can be things, process flows and automations to simplify some existing, maybe paper-based processes, and then really looking at ways that we can take some of the line of business applications, things that have already been developed by your agency, and incorporate those into Teams. And so when we look at the kind of the building block capabilities in Teams, all of the ones that are not highlighted, these are things that have been added into Teams since we really started having this meeting. So I think back in March, I started highlighting this list, and it would usually have, I think in February or March, we added private channels and retention updates and some third-party applications. And then we've just been adding these features as the months have gone. It's been, we skipped the month of July, I'm sorry, the month of August for our meeting. And so all of these capabilities have been brought in since the last time we met, which is in July. This new Teams meeting experience is a new join experience. And so right now we're rolling this out. And so what we're doing is we are turning it on. And so about 20% of users inside of GCC stands for Government Community Cloud. So if you're a governmental agency, there are a few that use Microsoft's Commercial Cloud, but most of you are in GCC. Then these are features that are going to be turned on for about 20% of users. We're turning it on, just checking to make sure that the scale is working and that we don't have any problems. And then we'll be rolling that out to all of the users within GCC. One of the challenges that we've had in the past with regard to GCC is that lagged very far behind the commercial O365 in capabilities. And I'm very pleased to let you know that that gap in time between when something is released to the commercial tenants and the commercial customers and when it's released to our government customers has been shortening. And in October, we are going to start and are committed to what we call simultaneous releasing. And so what that means is that no longer will your friends in the commercial tenant be getting all of the things first, and you'll be getting it some months later, or never. And so we will be releasing things to the GCC and commercial tenant at the same time. So this will, I think, really help for all of us to stay on the same page. So some really neat things that have come out since we met last is the pop-out chat. So back before we had this, you might be in a meeting and then you started a chat and you had to switch back and forth, and your meeting would get really small on your screen, and then you'd be having your chat and you'd have to click back over to the meeting. Well, now the meeting can be in one window, a chat can be in a separate window. And so while we're trying to keep you focused so that you don't have 15 different screens going at the same time and make it confusing, we are kind of opening up the experience a little bit to make it easier to not have to jump around quite so much inside of Teams. If you're using Citrix, we have a Citrix virtual desktop support. We are now certified for the Surface Hub for GCC, which means the Surface Hub devices, which are these television-like devices with handwriting recognition and all these really cool features built in around whiteboards. They are now certified for GCC. And then we also have the ability to upload custom backgrounds. So right now I'm just using the blur background, but you can, there are a bunch of backgrounds that Microsoft has put up into the gallery of backgrounds, but you can now upload your own. And so previously this was something that IT had to do to maybe create like a DIR background I saw, and I've seen other backgrounds that are agency specific, but now you can upload a custom one. I would just say it's a business app. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of crazy what people will upload as their background. So just realize that your boss may be looking at your background. Priority notifications is when you are wanting to get a hold of somebody, you can send a message with priority and they will actually get alerted multiple times until they respond to the message. And so it gives you the ability when you really want to get a hold of somebody to quote, pester them a little bit. Bookings is an application that allows you to do scheduling. And so we see customers using bookings for return to work scenarios where you can actually go in and schedule time in the office. So if your organization is limiting the number of people who can come back into the office at a given time, this is a way to do that. Another capability, this pinning apps and teams. So we're going to go more into the customizations and applications that can be added into Teams. And so pinning means that you'll be able to put those on that left-hand navigation inside of Teams. And so if you probably have things like calendar and chat and activity in the left-hand side now. And so this gives your organization the ability to take additional applications and pin them to the side. You also, as an individual, can add apps like maybe Stream, Microsoft Stream, or Planner, and you could pin that to the side as well. So it's always available and easy to get to. And then lastly, app templates, it's short for application templates. These are applications that are focused on a variety of different capabilities. One is called the Company Communicator. And so that gives you, your organization, the ability to send out communication broadly to different groups or to everyone. That's what's called an app template. So these were created by Microsoft. They're available for free. We give you the code, we give you all the configuration, very detailed instructions on how they get implemented. And there's a whole variety of these app templates. And we're going to talk a little bit more about these as we go through. And then also bots. So these are automated interfaces that you can interact with, that you can ask questions to. And so one of the great bots that I really like is called the adoption bot or the Q&A bot. And so that gives you the ability to load a bunch of questions and answers, like questions and answers about teams or questions and answers about program areas inside your organization, inside your agency, so that you can actually ask questions to a bot and it gives you the answer based in the knowledge base. And then what can be done is if you don't get the answer that you need, then you can ask an expert. But there's been some really great case references around taking a body of knowledge about, again, particular programs, program areas, or programs like Teams, putting them into a bot, and then allowing the community to be able to go and ask questions of that. It kind of removes that first layer of questions and makes it easier to get information out. So a lot that has been added in the really the last 45 days. Any questions about that?
Michael, we had a question about when the Together mode and the 9x9 gallery might hit Government Cloud, and we probably need to repeat the sign-in sheet too.
Okay, great. So let me do this. I'll go back to the sign-in sheet real quick, and then we can talk about. There's the sign-in sheet. So you can just hold your phone up, put your camera on, point it at that. It'll open up the form, and you can sign in, or you can go to that URL on your computer and just sign in. And if you don't mind giving us some feedback on our Texas Teams community, that would be great. So the question was, when will the Together mode and the what we call the large gallery view, which is the 7x7 video, be coming? We see that coming in the next couple of months. And so I don't have an exact timeline for either of those, but those are some of the new meeting experiences that are rolling out this fall. And again, we expect those to be coming much sooner to GCC than previously, when there would be this large gap between when something would come to the commercial tenant and when it would come to the GCC. Any other questions? All right, let's keep trucking. So I want to move into the next section where we really talk about what else can be done with Teams and how we go about doing that. And then, as I said earlier, we have a guest that is joining us to talk about what they're doing down at the City of Austin. And so, I've been kind of going on and on about that you could do a lot more than chat in meetings. And so what we look at is there are the core applications that come right out of the box with Office 365. And so these are things like OneDrive and Word and Excel, OneNote, Dynamics, Power BI, Planner, PowerPoint, Forms. And so there's about 30 plus apps that are available that just come out of the box with Office 365. When you set up Teams and you start using Teams, there is an additional set of applications that are called third-party apps that are available. There's about 350 applications that are available in GCC. There's more, about 450 or so that are available in the commercial cloud. And what third-party apps are is these are applications that you might already be subscribing to. So like this one is MailChimp right here. This is Trello, which is used for project management. YouTube is one of the most used third-party applications that can be leveraged inside of Teams. Salesforce, GitHub, and there's this huge list of what are called third-party apps. Now, these are applications that you might already subscribe to that have already gone through all the security work and making sure where the data is saved and signing up for an account. And so these are apps that can be enabled inside of Teams and brought inside of Teams. Now, there's a variety of ways that these applications are built so that Teams becomes an enhanced interface to these applications. And so we're going to go into a little bit more detail on that. Now, something to note about third-party apps is they need to go through some review. And so most agencies have turned off third-party apps at the beginning when they started rolling out Teams, just so there wasn't quite so much to understand or quite so much to digest. And then we didn't want to create confusion if someone clicked on more apps and then saw all of these apps and what I would do with those. And so what we're going to be doing over time is turning on third-party apps in a controlled manner and then really looking for applications that your agency is already using that we could surface up in Teams that would allow you to work more efficiently. One of the goals with Teams, as I said earlier, is to create a palette as an interface where you can stay in the context of the work that you're doing and have access to all of that information right inside of Teams. And third-party apps and their additional features and functions that we build into Teams are a way to do that. Then there are also custom apps. And so most organizations have some custom apps that have been written for them, either by their development department or by a third party, like a vendor or a partner. And so these can revolve around a variety of things: work processes, productivity, employee services, different workflows and approvals. And so these custom apps are something that may have already been done, that can be incorporated into Teams, or maybe something that you're looking to do in the future, that instead of starting from a base platform and just coding from the ground up, they can actually be written with Teams as an interface to those. And then there's this thing called Power Platform, and we're going to dig into this in detail with David Gottlieb with the City of Austin, and this is what he really used to develop their application, multiple applications actually that they've been using there. And so those are things like Power BI for visualizations and dashboards, Power Apps, which gives you the ability to create simple user interfaces to be able to kick off business process flows or interact with information, and then Flow, which is also called Power Automate. And this gives you the ability to create workflows or do automated interactions between the information that's being submitted and potentially send a message. Maybe send an acceptance workflow, or add information into a SharePoint list. So again, we'll go into more detail of what's available there. Secondly, there's things called app templates. That's what I spoke about earlier. And so we have these low code, no code, already written by Microsoft. They're freely available. They're out on GitHub. They're called app templates. And so there's a huge variety of these that have been written, well, 9, I guess that's not that huge, but but these are apps that you can take, you can tailor, you can make them fit your needs, and so, and again, they are freely available. Now, we do have some programs available through Microsoft where if you go out and you find some of these app templates and you're interested in some help getting them implemented, then I would welcome you to reach out to me and let me know what you're interested in, and we can see if there's a way that we can work together to help you with that. And then lastly is built from scratch. So we talked a little bit about bots earlier. There's the ability to create tabs in Teams, and then there's the ability to have what are called messaging extensions. And so let me show some examples of what those are. So if you look at this, Teams is really the scaffolding for creating efficiencies, creating new work experiences, and really meeting your team where they are with regard to the work that they need to get done. And so ways that we can do that, I spoke earlier about the third-party applications. So there's a whole app store that has all these third-party applications in it. And so these applications have gone through certifications by Microsoft. And there is a website that I will provide the link on the follow-up materials that has all the compliance and security information behind these third-party apps that have been written. Many of these are big brand name applications, and then some of them are much smaller applications that have been written to interface with Teams. And then we have tabs. And so the ability to add information by clicking this plus symbol right up here, let me circle that. By clicking that plus, you have the ability to add in different tabs. So this is an example of using Planner in a tab. So if this is the Team Superheroes community, this is the content calendar. So this is where they're looking at the calendar of information that they're going to have, and these are all the tasks they need to do in order to achieve these Team Superheroes community events. So that is using a tab as part of an interface for a solution area to give people more information where they're working. And then there are bots, which you spoke about earlier. And so bots give you the ability to interact and ask questions about information that might be in one of your repositories. It might be training information, training content. And so a very large use for bots. And we can go into a little bit more detail depending on our time that we have. Let me do a quick time check here. Okay. And then there are what are called adaptive cards. And so the cards, this is basically information that comes in as a chat. This information was actually brought in by a flow. We spoke earlier about Power Automate and flows. And so as information comes in, it can be formatted into this really nicely formatted card. And then there can be links that are put into this card. So in this case, there was a new registration submission received. And if we click right here, then we can go to the information on that submission. And so cards can provide content and information and then also provide escalation. So if that didn't answer your question, then speak to a service agent or speak to the IT help desk. And so it's a way to format information and then provide additional actions that can be taken. And then lastly, we have what are called message extensions, and these are along the bottom right down here. A popular one is YouTube, as we spoke about earlier. So this is the YouTube extension. So when you're creating a new message, if you click the YouTube message extension, it pops up this interface right here, and then you can type in a search to find a particular YouTube video. So in this case, we typed in process automation in Microsoft Teams. It finds this video, and then when you hit enter, it actually formats a message, puts the YouTube logo on there, puts what the video is, content about the video, and inserts the thumbnail image for the video and a link to play the video. And so these are shortcuts that you can use to add additional content into a meeting, into a chat message. So you might have used things like the GIF or emoticons. This is Microsoft Stream. This is Poly for doing user polls. So there's a huge variety of these message extensions that can be put in that can just make it easier. So there's one here for the stock market. So you could type in a stock ticker symbol and it would give you the content on that stock. So these are kind of just building blocks that can be used to create solutions that are all out of the box capabilities that are part of your teams. So I'm going to start doing a lot less talking and bring David Gottlieb in and really start talking about, let me discard my ink. Let me come out to the meeting here. We'll go on video. There's David. All right, let me turn off my together mode preview here. There we go. Okay, so let me go back to the slide here and introduce David properly. So David Gottlieb is a senior project manager with the City of Austin. He works in their communications technology management department and is really just one of the people that I really enjoy interacting with because he just loves to dig in on, he's specialized in SharePoint Teams and Power Platform and looks for ways to innovate and create solutions for the City of Austin and for the people he works with. So David, you want to add on that?
Okay, yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. First of all, I have to laugh at that picture because I'm much younger and I have more hair in that picture. So what you're seeing in live in effect is what happens after working with Microsoft for a while. But I do love the platform. It has a lot of potential, and yeah, I'd like to share a couple. I talked to Greg. I talked to Michael about some of the ways that we've used it, and kind of wanted to share. I know sometimes we talk about platform as a service, it can be hard to visualize. So today we have kind of, I think, a pretty easy use case to kind of conceptualize all that for you and go from there.
So when David and I were talking about this, we really kind of talked about the process that they went through, and really it's starting with the business scenario. And so David, maybe you could speak a little bit about the way you use this process and who you were talking to and how you went about.
Sure, and I have a couple slides after this that'll walk through that. The City of Austin has started implementing what are called BRMs, or business relationship managers, and they've been going out to the departments and kind of meeting with the folks on the ground and looking over their shoulders and seeing how they're doing their kind of day-to-day operations, trying to understand their pain points. And then, if it looks like it might be a good fit, I've been working with the BRMs to kind of show them this platform. And the use case I'm gonna show today was really the first one that really lets people kind of sink their teeth in and see the potential of this. And so the use case we're going to talk about today was there's a group of people do you want me to jump to that, or
yeah,
you want to keep
actually
going?
let's just we'll just talk a little bit about those building blocks. And we spoke about this a little bit earlier. And so that we have these Power Apps, which are web and mobile applications. And we have Power Automate, which is workflow and automation, and then Power BI, which is really the data insights and visualizations. So when you look at these, Power Apps is used for receiving the data and the info. Automate is used for sending the data and the info, and then Power BI is used for visualizing the data and the info. And so, again, these are part of your platform. And then, David, we can go ahead and go right into the use case. And do you want me to go like full screen mode with the slides?
Yeah.
And then you can just tell me when to advance.
I have a couple clicks there that animations. So if you can go into full screen, that'd be great. Perfect. So as Michael was saying, there are some building blocks here that you can use to fit a particular niche and then bring everything together in teams. So let's just talk about, so there's a community court, downtown Austin community court group. And basically this team tries to give employment opportunities to maybe people who have records or homeless or trying to get into the workforce. So they're not typically power users. So we needed a technology to help them kind of manage their work. And so this is the group of people. It's not, we're talking about small, medium, and large projects. This is what I would consider a small project. Took me probably about a week to do everything. It wasn't a huge team. It was just me meeting with some people, talking with them. We took a very agile approach where we kind of mock stuff up. But the use case here was the downtown community court, about 15 people that were trying to manage the intake of their work and measure how effective the program was. So if you want to go to the next slide.
You bet.
And I just wanted to show you here over to the right with some feedback we got from the customer, just to kind of give some street cred here. But they said way more than we ever had before. It does a lot more than I even anticipated. It checks all the boxes and will keep the working flowing. The Power BI component looks great. We've never had any sort of data like this before. Blah, 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 blah. The point being is that when you meet with people, they don't even understand the potential of this platform. We're going to start with a paper form and a spreadsheet. And then if you leverage this technology, which is actually, I would not consider myself a computer programmer. I'm more of the low code, no code, cobble it together kind of person. We'll show you how where we started from and the end result. Sound good? Any questions here before we kind of get going? Cool. All right, Michael, let's do the next slide. Okay. So what we started with was, you always have to ask a lot of questions when you're working with people, because this technology has a lot of it depends, right? And so the first question I asked them was, who is filling out this form? And you need to know that because you need to know if you can leverage some of these tools more easily than others. And in this case, only people who worked at the city of Austin were going to be filling this out. So I knew they had an Active Directory account. I knew they had a Microsoft O365 license, and we weren't trying to bridge, the public, which you might take a different tact. And so they said, yeah, only people at the city of Austin are going to be filling this out. So basically what happens is if different departments get the need or understand that there's like trash on the side of the road, or there's parks that need maintenance, they can come in and fill out this work order, and a group of people will go out and clean up the trash or remove the graffiti or fix the picnic bench or whatever it is that kind of falls into their purview. And so what you can see is this form, and if you can highlight, Michael, the top, the date, the requester name, the phone number, the requester email, and the requester department. Well, if you've logged into your computer, I already know all that information. So you don't necessarily need to recreate this form. So in its exact framework. And what happened originally was some folks that really didn't understand the full potential kind of just took this as an order and just took this form and used InfoPath and made it from a paper to a digital form, which, you know, technically is not what they asked for, but doesn't really leverage the platform in a manner that if you took a more holistic approach of saying, okay, well, let's look at your inputs and your outputs, and then think about how we could restructure the whole process from start to finish. So really, the only thing that was on this form was the location of work and the description of work, and then they needed a way to attach photos. I don't even know how they attach the photos on this paper form. So, but they also showed on this form the fields that the internal team used to track where this thing was going. So, you know, the DAC use. So we don't need to present those fields to the people filling out the form. And once we started using this and talking to the customer, they realized some of the potential of this, and they said, you know what we really need, David, is a lat long, because a lot of times we'll get, you know, it's not so obvious. It's not just an address, right? It could be in the northwest corner of a park behind the creek.
Yeah, so the lat long is the latitude, longitude, so the GPS coordinates of the actual thing that needs to be done.
So these are some of the things that went through my mind when I looked at this form. I was like, all right, well, we don't have to ask certain questions, and we can present some questions to some groups and not others. And I had a pretty good handle. This is actually pretty easy. It's not like super complicated. So I said, okay, well, let's look at your data. Let's look at how you're kind of handling this information. What's your process now? So if you go to the next form, or the next slide, they just had a pretty simple spreadsheet, and it's kind of hard to see here, but on column G, it says square footage. And what I found is that a lot of people who use Excel don't really understand data. And if you're going to have a number field, you can't put text in it. And similarly, if you look at column L, which is date opened, you know, they're putting Monday through Friday or daily, and you can't put text in a date field. And because they were not really understanding how to leverage databases in general, they couldn't really automate any of their visualization. So I was like, all right, let's just think about this slightly differently, and let's present them with a way to capture this information that allows for reporting. Because Robert, the individual who was charged with kind of coming up with some metrics to how do you measure your work, you know, always struggled. He did it, you know, randomly and just kind of piecemealed it all together to cobble something together. It was nothing really automated. So that's kind of where we started from. And maybe I'll just pause to see if there are any questions before we kind of talk about where we go from here. We good? Okay. So let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Michael.
Not at all.
So what I did was, right off the bat, I created a Power App that's connected to a SharePoint list. So this would be the link on the internal City of Austin site somewhere, however they advertise this, that if you want to submit a work order, you click on this link and it goes to this page. So it's just, I'm very much a less is more kind of person. So if you want to submit a work order request, you just click the work order request button and go ahead and click that. It's only 2 screens, so in the interest of time, we'll run through this in the demo. But I just wanted to make sure it flowed here. And this was the form that we redid. And really, we just wanted a work order title. And if you notice to the right of work order title, it's got the requester email. So that's the person who's logged in. So in Power BI, I have access to all the information about the person who's filling out this form. I don't need them to type that in. So really, we just needed the location of the work, the description of the work, some special instructions if there's, you know, something dangerous or just something to be concerned about, I put beware of Fido. And if you needed to attach something, you can click the attach button. The nice thing about this is Power Apps works really well on a mobile device. So if you have your camera, you can just, if you're on a phone and you click that button, you can take a picture and upload it. The other thing we added was a latitude and longitude. So it's going to default to wherever you're filling this out. So if you're in the field and you fill this out, it'll default to your lat long. We put a link to a GPS coordinate. If you want to fill it out and just specify the lat long, you can put it in there. And then we just have 3 simple buttons at the bottom: submit and close, submit and create another, and the home button just brings you back home. So very, very simple, 1-page form, which replaced the input form to begin with. So go ahead and click next there, Michael, and click next one more time, or click. So basically, we use Power Automate to send some emails, and in this scenario, they wanted 3 emails. When a new item was submitted, right, it went to the manager, and then they would assign it to someone. So they'd get an email that basically says this. They could click on that, like trash in the creek test, and assign it to someone, right? So once they assign it to someone, go ahead and hit click next. The person who filled out the form would basically get an email that they could also reject it if they wanted to, but in this case, they assigned it to someone. And you'll see in that second sentence, this work will be completed within 5 days by Gottlieb David. That's the person he assigned it to. And then blah, blah, blah. And then when that ticket is closed, go ahead and click one more time. It would send an email back that says, hey, thank you for submitting it. It's been closed. If you want to submit another one, it puts the link that takes them right back to the work order. So this was pretty much, automated a lot of their scheduling back and forth emails. All happens on the back end when you change the status of the record, which we'll kind of walk through together when this is done. And if you want to go to the next screen. And then because we have all this data in a SharePoint list, you can easily create all sorts of visualizations. So you can see here on the bottom, we've got a bunch of tabs: work orders by type, by department, tickets per month, square foot. So we had some meetings. I was like, well, how do you report on this? And once I had an idea of some of the metrics they needed to collect, we added those and were able to report on them. So let's go to the next screen. And then what I did is in SharePoint, you can create a web page, and I kind of created them a little portal for what I call a work in progress page, which shows, I know this is just a screenshot and we'll go into it, but it shows different items that get created from that form by pending work orders, which are work orders that are new and not assigned, to open or on hold, and a couple of different buttons here. The point being is that there's a SharePoint page that was built to help them manage their work. And then if you go to the next screen, what you can do in Teams is, after you've kind of built all these little pieces, I created them a team, because then you need to talk about permissions and who gets to see what. So we created them a community service restitution team. You can see it on the left. And in the general channel, we didn't really feel the need to create a bunch of different channels. You can see that I embedded all these different elements in there. And what's interesting is one of them says bulk item calendar, which is a web page. So what would happen is, a lot of times they'd show up at a place, let's say there's a couch on the side of the road, and they would always go back to austintexas.gov and try to find the web page for the bulk item pickup calendar. And so I was able to embed that calendar right in the team via a tab to just make it really easy for them in one spot to just to go, even on their phone. They'd always have it right there, and just within a few clicks, they could have access to all that stuff. And if you want to go to the next one, I think that might be it. And we'll do a demo if you guys want to see that. I can demo it for you if you want to just stick with the slide in the, I guess we have plenty of time here. I'm just doing a time check.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop sharing, David, and then you can start sharing.
Oops, sorry, hit the wrong button. All right, let's do this. I'm going to share the screen. All right, so let's kind of move this off to the side. I pulled up some of these screens just so you could kind of see some of the stuff that we started with. This was that spreadsheet, and you can tell here, you know, in the square footage, they've got a bunch of text. And over here for date due, they're not putting dates in these fields, and that is going to cause some issues. Anyways, let me jump back to Teams. And here is my community service restitution team. And I'm just going to pause. And Michael, can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I can see it great.
Network check. Just because we're here on the dashboard, I'll just start here. We could go left to right. But just so you can kind of see the end result is this is Power BI embedded in a Teams tab, and you've got these different tabs. So you'll see that when we assign a work order, we choose the document type, and that will be illustrated here. We also have different departments at the city that are filling this out. And I should say that it'll be obvious here when I hit the next tab. This program kind of got shut down when COVID started, so we don't have as much data in here as we normally would. But you can see, and this is all interactive, so all these screens. So if you wanted to see debris and pickup items, these are all the titles, type of work. You can customize this however you want. You can see here square footage. If you want to know what was my square footage in February, you can see these are all the actual work orders. A lot of times they want to know how many crews were there, so you could filter by a date range. Again, site visits, and these are the people on the team, so they wanted to know how much was each person doing. So that's Power BI. You can do a lot in Power BI. It's super simple once you kind of get over the hump. So that's that. So we'll start here at this kind of work order landing page. We'll just kind of go left to right. And what I've done here is this is a SharePoint page embedded in a team. And what you'll see is these are all new requests. And so typically there's only a couple here. So it doesn't quite look as clean as it normally does, but because nobody's manning this, you can see the work just keeps coming in and it's not getting done. And we'll click on some of those. But typically what will happen is this is a short screen. It says pending work orders. And then these are open work orders, which is what I was testing. And then these are work orders that are on hold. So those three status to me are kind of work in progress. But a lot of the team just wanted their work orders. So in SharePoint, you can create a custom view where the assigned to is equal to me, the person who's logged in. So I've created them a tab on the top. So if I'm a crew person, I can click on my work orders and I will see only a filtered list of my work orders. And we'll kind of walk through this together. This is for the supervisor. That's just a direct link to the master list. So if you don't format it, it can be a bit overwhelming, but that's all the data. And this is the calendar that you could type an address in here and see what the schedule was. So this is just a web page that's useful to this team on how to something they need for their kind of daily business. And then if you wanted to create a work order, you can click this button and this launches the Power App. I'm going to do this Power App in a browser because if you do it in Teams, it doesn't grab my latitude and longitude. So let's just walk through this process one time, and then you'll kind of see how it all works. So you click in here, test work order for Microsoft demo. And location of work, let's do by the creek near the central library. All right, and then you could say, you know, homeless encampment. We have a homeless problem now. Encampment down by the creek with lots of trash. And we could put some special instructions if we wanted to. You could attach a file, which will show up, you know. And it grabbed my Latin long, and if I wanted to grab another one, I would click on this link, find it, and update it, which I can. Let me just allow this as an example. Give me 1 sec. Reload this page. I can switch to satellite, and you can see here's the central library. And let's say that the trash is down by the creek there. I can just copy and paste this latitude and this longitude in there and submit and close.
Now, David, how much code did you have to write in order to create that form?
For the most part, let me go back and show you. All of this stuff was super simple to do. This took me to grab the, I had to ask a question. So this is like, how many times do you have to go ask Google to do that? So, you know, I think once you kind of, if you've never used Power Apps before, there is a little bit of a learning curve. But, and then once you get the hang of it, as long as you're not trying to, this is where they say it's like a no code and then it's low code. But if you get to the point where you have to like type some code in, you probably are going to need to Google that or call a friend. So other than this one thing, this is super straightforward to do. If you can create a PowerPoint slide, you can create this with a little practice. So then we'll go back to our team, and what you'll see is if I go to work order landing, that we've got this test work order for Microsoft demo. Does everyone see that? And so what we could do is you can either just go straight to the edit button, or I can click on it. And this is just your typical SharePoint. And you know, you can always make this better, but you know, sometimes for government work, it's good enough. And so you can see here is the picture I downloaded of some trash. Teams doesn't always let me go back so easily. So a lot of times you could just pop this out and it goes to the website. Sometimes the Teams wrapper can trip you up a little bit, but it still makes it pretty easy to bring it all together. And so basically the process would be a supervisor would see this and they would assign it to someone. So this is pulling from Active Directory. And if they wanted to assign it to more than one person, they could. And they would just kind of fill out these fields, which is the type of work, you know, let's say it's a debris pickup litter. And if there was a due date, you could put in a due date. And this was just one site, and you estimate, or they could come back and type it in later. And we're going to send 3 people out there. If you want to put notes and equipments, you can. And this is where you change the status. And if it's open, that triggers an email. And when it's complete, it triggers an email. So a new one triggers an email, open triggers an email, and that's it. So that's it. So then the person who got it assigned will come here and they'll see, oh, here's my work order. And they click on either this button if they wanted to grab this Google Map link. Let's see here. And you can see it puts the dot right where we did the lat long, and you could flip over to the satellite view and zoom right into where the actual issue was. Sorry. So then we could hit edit, and they would type in their notes, we clean this up. Without issue, they could put in what they used, trash bags, whatever, and they would just change the status to complete and save. And that pretty much completes the circle of life, so to speak, for a work order. And we have the dashboard set to automatically update, twice a day. I can't remember what the schedule is, but whatever they wanted. Once a day, twice a day. I think with your O365 subscription, you get 8 times a day unless you have premium with 30-minute increments. So that kind of in a nutshell is a really simple way that, again, we used SharePoint, we used Power Apps, we used Power BI, we used Teams to manage permissions and bring it all together through these tabs at the top. That's it. That's all I got.
I love it, David. What I really like about this is you took something that was a manual process. You did some interviews with the people to understand what it was that needed to be done. You kind of took an agile approach, like you had said, where you built it out and then you showed it to them and, okay, does this do it? And then a couple of tweaks later, you've got basically a functional capability, and then you didn't try to make it super complex, kept it pretty simple, and then leveraged sort of these building blocks that you had available to you to build out a solution, but then pulled it together.
Right.
And I know that this is just one of the solutions that you pulled together. So why don't we do this? Why don't we stop and ask if there are any questions, and we can go into more detail about maybe some of the areas where you looked and how you learned some of these things, or whatever questions anybody from the community might have. I see, let's see, somebody has their hand up, being so polite. So Kyle.
Hi folks, this is Kyle Humphreys. I am a SharePoint site administrator with the Texas Workforce Commission. Been working on SharePoint for about 4 or 5 years now. I'm excited and interested in Teams. I really appreciated the demo. I'm not going to get into the implementation details, but just kind of a high-level question of, we've got a SharePoint list, we've got a Power Apps interface, we have several useful things. How would you characterize the true value of embedding that interface in the Teams UI, as opposed to like an Edge collection of browser tabs or something of that nature? What's the advantage of Teams in this scenario for this solution?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The main advantage, I mean, I used to do just like, you saw that portal page I built in SharePoint, which is essentially does the same thing. But what Teams does is does a couple of things that really, once you start using all these tools, you realize how they all fit together. And so what Teams does is it provides a platform for permissions, right? So even if you do a SharePoint site, you're going to have to manage who has access to that site. And similarly, when you use Power BI, when you hit the publish button, it makes it very easy to publish to a team as opposed to creating a workspace and then managing permissions for your workspace and managing permissions for SharePoint. And most of the times, the SharePoint admin gets out of the loop on who's supposed to have access to that. And I've never been very successful at teaching supervisors how to manage permissions in SharePoint, even though you show them over and over again. It seems like if you say, this is your team, and you could add members and remove members to your team, they seem to do that better than managing permissions in SharePoint for whatever reason. That's how I would answer that.
Well, that's clear and succinct. I have the same experience as you. We struggle with SharePoint permissions and training people up in that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah. The other thing that I like, David, is something that you did where you put that bulk trash collection link right on the team site. So if I'm out on the job site and I'm using Teams on my mobile device, then I can just click on that tab and I have the website right there. Versus if Kyle, like if you did it as a collection, then they would have to, you'd have to somehow have everybody have that collection in their browser, so that they would have access to that particular website at the time of need. So I love the way David embedded it into these are things you might also need while you're doing this thing.
And the other thing I've realized is that, I've tried to use SharePoint on my mobile device, and it's just not as easy to use as Teams. And so I think now that most people are already using Teams, it's, they don't have to bookmark it. It just seems more fluid for them. Launch the Teams app, go to your team. That's where you call each other, and then your tabs are right there. So again, it's just a kind of an easy way to bring all these little bits and pieces together, and they're apps that are web responsive and leverage all this stuff. So again, that's another reason why I like to use Teams.
Thank you.
All right. And any other questions about that particular app before we dive in a little bit more into some other things? Give it just a minute here. So David, maybe we could talk a little bit about the scenario you also did around COVID, and the app that you developed for the COVID testing.
Yeah, did you want me to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I don't think we need to show anything because of the HIPAA data challenge, but maybe we could just talk about kind of from a business scenario, and I think maybe we could just give some ideas about different things that can be done.
Right. So yeah, I'll just kind of walk you through how we leverage the O365 platform for COVID and COVID testing. And so Mike and I didn't want to overwhelm y'all with too much stuff, but without going into too much detail, at a high level, I got a call on like a Thursday night that we wanted to do drive-through testing Saturday morning, right? And so we needed a way to quickly gather input from the public and schedule a drive-through test. And what was really interesting about this whole scenario was that, if you've ever been involved in trying to coordinate some kind of quote unquote emergency, everything's changing all the time. And when you're a computer person, you usually like your requirements nailed down before you start building, but that really wasn't possible. So, there were a lot of questions about, well, what are the questions and what are the answers, and the question, who's deciding this? So what we decided to do was use Microsoft Forms to collect this data. And what was nice about this was we could create a form and give it to the doctors and the epidemiologists and let them iterate that form until they were happy with the questions and the answers. They didn't need me, the IT person, to help them build that form and answer it. So we let them churn on that form and kept changing it and kept changing it and kept changing it until, we were quote unquote ready for Rev 1. And so what we did is once that form was somewhat buttoned up, we created a Power Automate because this had HIPAA data in it. We had to be careful, and we created a very secure team with multi-factor authentication enabled for all users, and audited and all that stuff, so that when at first it was a group of about, I think 50 physicians across the city would fill this out. If someone came in and they had certain symptoms, it would push that information into a SharePoint list. And so that was something that's not terribly difficult to do. Is just when you hit submit, populate a list. And, you know, as a computer person, we like to automate things. So then we were going to automate the next step, like, well, if you answer these 7 questions, then it does this. But it was going to schedule a test. But they didn't want to do that in the beginning. They wanted an epidemiologist to come over here and look at each one and then say, yeah, we're going to schedule that one a test. Of course, once we kind of set everything up for that, they came back later and said, no, we're getting too many of them. We don't have the time. If they answer these 4 questions this way, then we'll automate it. So basically it went from a form to a list. And what happened was it was interesting. They did a mock test at the actual drive-through facility. And what was interesting is that it actually took longer to check people in and check people out than the actual test. And so significantly more. So we thought, well, how can we leverage this platform to quickly check people in and quickly check people out? And so what we did is we created a power app that we could hand a phone to a volunteer, and they would just launch the app, and they choose their location, and they basically choose, are they checking people in or checking people out? And what they wanted was, if you can imagine, the poor person whose job it was to check people into this COVID testing site, they did not want to interact with the public. So we told them, don't roll your car window down. Just hold your driver's license up to the window so that the check-in person could see it. And then when they hit the check-in button, it would show a filtered list of all the people who were scheduled to have a test that day, and they would click on their name. And then they just wanted a little bit of information, because the people administering the test were about 50 yards away from the people checking in. So they wanted to know what color was the vehicle, what side was the patient on, and the make of the vehicle. So we basically got this down where they could check people in about 30 seconds and similarly check people out. And that would timestamp when they came in and when they left. So as soon as you checked someone in, at the next station, it was printing out the label. They had to print out a federal patient form. So we had this going to Excel. We also had, when they did get scheduled a test, it would push a subset of this information into like a scheduling list, because we didn't want all this HIPAA data in just the schedulers test. And then it would send them an email and robocall to remind them of their appointment. And then afterwards, the epidemiologist came back and said, well, we were kind of doing this in Excel. Outside of this, it's not working so well. So we partnered with the epidemiologist to push, when the results came back, the lab tech would update this list with the results, and that would use Power BI to push it to another list that the epidemiologist used. And then this is what was being reported on in the news about where we were in terms of results and contact tracing and all that other stuff. And we had Power BI reports for the people at the check-in station that would say basically 196 people are due today. We've got this many in the queue, and that many were tested today, and average time, all that good stuff. So that's a lot, I know, but that's how we leveraged the platform in just a matter of a few days to get us over the hump. And then in the process, we started researching more mature products that offered some functionality that this didn't, and ultimately transitioned to that. But this met our needs for, God, I think it was like 3 or 4 months before we moved to something else.
Yeah, and I love that you were able to take this immediate need, build a solution, iterate on the solution, and then it's not one of these like, oh, sorry, we did it this other way, and I'm sorry you want this other thing now, but you can't have that because we didn't make it so you could do that. But because sort of the flexibility of, like with the Power Automate, when they decided, oh, we would like that to be automated, what would it take to do that? Then it's just a few changes to the Power Automate versus, again, and Power Automate, for those who haven't used it, is almost like a Visio diagram. You're listing out what you want it to do and what fields you want it to look up and where you want to send that information. It's not writing code per se. And so, iterating on that makes it a lot easier than, having to go in and rewrite actual Java code or something along that line.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Yeah, so questions for David about that example. Is there anybody out there that'd like to know a little bit more about how they did that, or some of the things that David did, or where he got some of this knowledge?
I just find it so impressive and inspiring how creative our government folks are and how they take tools we have and they just make things work. So color me impressed.
Awesome. Yes.
Thanks, Joy. I saw Kyle put his hand up, and then I see Star Donovan with Parks and Wildlife with her hand up as well. So Kyle, why don't we go with you first, because I think your hand was up first.
Okay, thank you. I asked the previous question, and it's kind of both examples kind of lend me or bring me to the same question, and it's sort of a development process order. I know there's lots of details about how you built all the apps and stuff like that, but I'm interested in the SharePoint permissions versus the Teams permissions process. And it seems to me that in both cases here, you've built out a SharePoint list or a SharePoint solution and then created a team and then somehow added the team's owners to the SharePoint site, or how did that work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. What you really want to do is when you create a team, it creates a site collection on the back end. And so the trick is to create the team first and then go to that site collection. You just go to the Files tab, basically, and then say Open in SharePoint. And then create your list there. That way the list inherits the permissions of the team.
Okay.
So I always ask them, do you already have a team? If you have a team, I say, add me to the team as an owner. Then I go to that team's site collection and create the list there.
Okay, well that creates an interesting conundrum for me personally, simply because I'm new in the role here at the Texas Workforce Commission, but our current governance requires us to largely ignore the SharePoint site that's created by the team's group. And we've got our pre-existing SharePoint installation. It's been there for a number of years, and
Right.
we kind of treat the team's group SharePoint site as sort of just a repository of chat files.
Right.
So that's maybe our governance needs to be reviewed, but that's our current situation.
Yeah, I think the limit of that approach is then you're managing permissions in two places. You're managing permissions in teams, and typically the IT guy knows, I have no idea who's going to be in and out of that team on a daily basis. That's the team owner. So that's why I kind of prefer just to say, hey, this is your team, right? If this list is in your team, if you need to look at this and see you're letting people in here, and when they're not supposed to be in here, you need to remove them. And that kind of gets that sync out of the way where you're managing permissions in two places.
Well, we'll think harder about our current governance process.
But I'm also of the opinion, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So there you go.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, Kyle. Thank you. And Star.
Well, I had one question, and then from Kyle's, it's kind of like expanded a little into like several now.
Yeah.
So, one thing I wanted to ask you, David, and this one, it probably doesn't matter because, like you said, you moved on to a different product. But when you were explaining the initial setup of the ad hoc COVID solution,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that one list fed into another, and I
Yeah.
was wondering why in particular y'all did it that way instead of just creating views for the epidemiologist to show only what he wanted on the existing list rather than porting it to a second list.
I think the concern really was about the sensitivity of the data and who we were handing off, who had access to that data. And so that was really the driving force. So with a view, if somebody has the ability to create a view or somehow get access to a view, it's not really security bounded when you leverage views. And so, you know, we had volunteers checking people in, and the people who were filling out that form were putting in like symptoms, and they just didn't think that that group of people should have access in any way, shape, or form to that. So we segmented it. It was really about the sensitivity and a subset of that data. But we could have done it with views, and that, you know, that would have been fine. But I think just because everyone was nervous about, oh my gosh, were you putting HIPAA data in O365, and there wasn't a huge precedent for that, we just wanted to minimize, I think, the risk.
Okay. And so the other questions I wanted to ask was the forms you created for the first project, the trash reporting.
Yeah.
Did you make those as group forms so that they're not tied to any one person for retention purposes, or are they still under the form creator?
They're really just an extension of the list. So they're tied to that list. So it's really just changing the interface of how you create a new record in the list.
So it's not a Microsoft Forms form.
No, it's a Power App. It's a Power App that feeds a list, right?
Okay.
It's not a form. Yeah.
Okay. That answers that. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, and I'm betting the answer is no, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. Have you, since like you mentioned, using the SharePoint sites that are created by teams, which are always in the modern template, have you had any other than stuff like, you know, the calendar web parts, have you had any limitations in creating stuff in the Teams SharePoint and being forced to use the modern template?
Well, I don't think you're forced. I think you can switch it out to some extent on how you view your pages. So I guess I'm still old school. I kind of like
classic web parts, but but it won't be on a classic template, the site template.
The site template.
It's always modern on Teams.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. I just know that sometimes I flip the list to classic view, and I flip document libraries to classic, and I flip web pages to classic.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just like the only thing I've noticed, and I'm sure Microsoft is going to get around it, but like is, for example, in the modern pages,
yeah,
you can't embed a classic calendar web part so that you get a full month view. You have to do like a link to it. And we had somebody who wanted to be able to add calendar entries from the events web part, which to the individual user's Outlook calendars, which I'm still looking into figuring out how to do.
Yeah, I'm not the guru of all things Microsoft. I just kind of hacked this together. So yeah, there's a lot of.
Well, you could have fooled me, so that's why I'm asking all these questions.
I always there's a checkbox somewhere between me and success. I just have to find it. The calendars are always a little tricky, I think, and they're always changing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Star. Kyle, I see you have your hand up, but it may just still be up from before. Did you have an additional question? Nope. All right, hand down. So let me share one additional slide with y'all. Some really great questions. Appreciate the interest in the interactions. Okay, so if this is a topic that interests you, and I could tell that for at least Kyle and Star, it is, I want to let you know about this thing called Teams Superheroes. So Teams Superheroes is, if you were part of the community back in, it was either March or April, we had a gentleman, his name is Jace Moreno with Microsoft, and he is globally one of the experts in really sharing this information about Teams as a platform. And so he has a YouTube channel called Teams Superheroes, and he has these different events, and they're now a monthly event. And so if you go out to this URL, and I will post this in the meeting chat, then you can sign up for this event. And it's a monthly event where Jace interviews companies who are using Teams in really interesting ways. And so they're calling it Unleashed, Microsoft Teams. And so if you're interested in more content on this, first, I would highly suggest going out and looking at any of the videos that Jace has already created. He's interviewed a number of companies on how they used Power Apps, Power Automate, bots, and how they integrated those into Teams. And then those are the existing videos. And then he has this monthly call. And then what we're also going to do is have some ongoing events that are really teaching you all about how to extend Teams, how to use third-party apps, and then how to use some of these building block services that we've talked about today. So let me bring back up the sign-in and evaluation. So if you haven't had an opportunity to sign in yet or to provide feedback about the Texas Team community, we sure would appreciate it. And I'll open it up one last time for questions, if anybody has any questions. And if not, then we will finish a couple of minutes early.
Michael, it's Joy.
Hey,
I know
Joy.
you were busy presenting, but some of us had a lot of trouble today finding captions, and I don't know if it was everybody. Is it something that might not have been turned on at your level, or had something happened at our level? What was going on there?
Yeah, great question. So are you seeing my screen?
And I am now. Now I'm seeing captions.
Okay, so I turned on live captions here. However, that is something that you do on your side, whereas with live events, you determine at the beginning whether you're going to have live captions on. And so it should be something that the individual users can turn on or turn off. Now, I will say every once in a while, something just disappears and then reappears. And
I think
software,
that's the case.
Yeah.
Because it's gone away on our side.
I wanted to download the participant list. There was a little option to download the participant list there for the last month or so, and all of a sudden it's not there today. And so Justin looked as well, and so I'm not really sure why that is.
But you know what? The automated captionings is relatively new for Government Cloud. And now that I think about it, when it started working, that might have been in live event. Is it there in both?
It is definitely there in live events. And again, you turn it on when you create the event that you're going to have that, and then you specify which languages you want to have available. And then the system actually goes in and then converts the spoken word into the text and then converts it into the different languages. In Teams meetings versus live events, the person selects live captions. But you're right, it did recently roll out to GCC, or it may be in the process of rolling out. And so it may not be 100% always there.
Okay. Yeah, I know we used it a few weeks ago, and then the option is not there today. So maybe it was one of those blips where they were.
So and I've seen things appear and then exactly, and then disappear again. I saw that there was a couple people that put their hands up. Roxy had her hand up, and I think Eddie Rowe has a hand up. Roxy, did you still have a question?
It was related to the chatting. I have accessibility to chatting when I host in my meetings. I did not, or I'm sorry, live captioning, sorry. But I did not have access to live captioning here.
So I think the same problem that other people are seeing. Eddie, did you have a comment on the same thing, or was yours something different? And you are on mute, Eddie, if you are speaking.
Sorry.
No problem.
So you're hosting this event in your tenant space, so it would not be anything on my side that prevents the captions from working, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
There shouldn't be.
Someone else said that was my fault. I was like, no, I sure go to my tenant space, and we're attending your team event, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think it's I just think it could just be a glitch in the matrix for today. Well, I want to thank David Gottlieb. He has just been so gracious with his time, working with me to get this set up, putting together the demo and the slides and everything. And so round of applause for David Gottlieb. Fantastic job. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and look forward, now that the city of Austin is also one of my customers. I know we had some other people. I know Michelle Lau was here from city of Austin. Really appreciate any and all of you from the city attending, and as well as our public sector, our education, the agencies, everybody. Thanks for being part of the community, and thanks for attending. I'll get the content out and send that out to everyone. And as Joy mentioned in the chat, the link to our recordings is in the chat from Joy, and then I will send out the PowerPoint in the form of a PDF so it doesn't clog up your mailbox. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop recording and say another one in the can here, another one done and finished. Thanks, everybody.